Well, I'm really looking forward to this conversation, and there's a number of reasons for it. But Scott, let me throw this out there first. One of the big reasons is because my partner she's a public health nurse. And so it's funny, like I think because we do this show, she thinks that I know more than I know. And so the way she speaks to me is like,
which makes sense.
Yeah.
For her.
No. But it's like, she speaks to me with like nurse lingo.
Like you're a professional.
Yeah. She's talking, she'll use like acronyms where I'm like, well, what's a CFPC? I don't fucking know what that is. Like, how the fuck am I supposed to know what that is?
And you know what? It's because technically she's works for the government, and the government loves acronyms.
They love their acronyms. So I always hear her talking about red box cases. Now again, she's a public health nurse, so she's the one where, let's say there's
you don't know the red box, dude.
Let's say there's a really bad case of like syphilis that has been caught in someone. She has to be the one that, like, A is the one to tell them. B is the one to try to contact trace all of their past sexual partners to like ensure that they're aware.
Investigation. Like
it's totally an investigator, right?
Now, I thought you meant red box cases like it was like a box.
No. So
a case, like a
no. Yeah. Let me finish here. A red box case, a case like investigative case, is a case that
not like a briefcase brand,
is extremely high priority because of how dangerous and how like not only dangerous to the patient but dangerous to the public it can be. And I've heard her talk about so many fucking times through this job, Group A Strep. Now, really? I am someone who has had strep throat countless times throughout my life. I was a strep carrier. I always thought strep throat was like, a fucking, like, it's a pain in the ass. It hurts your throat. You got to stay home from school when I was a kid.
It's not?
Well, strep can be extraordinarily dangerous. Strep, Group A Strep specifically, is a red box case according to the public health. Mm-hmm. And that is what you are here to talk about. And I think if there's anybody out there like myself who had this understanding of what they thought strep was, after hearing this conversation, their eyes are going to be pretty fucking wide open, because your case of Group A Strep led to something that I think is extremely shocking for someone like myself who did not realize the severity of something like strep. So walk us through it. What is Group A Strep? What happened to you, and why was it so insane?
This also, disclaimer right before you answer that, if you're a hypochondriac, you might want to turn this episode off.
Anyway, or turn it up. Or fucking deal with it and listen.
Go ahead, Scott.
I don't get to talk about syphilis. I thought
no? You can.
Well, let's not go that far, guys. Group A Strep, and then I add to it with necrotizing fasciitis. Necrotizing fasciitis is the death of the limbs, death of the skin, death. And back at that time, I wonder if your partner knows about how the media like to call it the flesh-eating disease, which always freaks people out. It's like there's these things that are crawling on your skin. When I talk to students, I substitute teach now, and I tell them about my story, I quickly divert to, it does not eat your skin or anything like that. So it's not
just so you know, kids.
Yeah, like, oh, freak you out. All right, so we want to talk about the illness itself, or how I contracted it, or what do you guys want to do?
Well, yeah, I mean, take us back to the beginning. I mean, what did this? Because again, when I mentioned strep, to me, strep to me was a scratchy throat.
Yeah,
it hurts to swallow.
A little bit of antibiotic.
Take an antibiotic.
Time off.
Bada boom, bada bing.
Bada boom, bada bing.
Bob's your uncle.
Sometimes you get it when you're sick.
Yes. Yeah. For you, did it start that way? Like what kind of strep are we talking about? Take us through it.
Group A is a more severe type. Now, we look back, I asked the doctor after I was released from the hospital, how the heck did I contract this? There was no way of telling. What they ended up finding was a bed of this infection in my left side of my back, which I go back to thinking that I was in training at the time, because I was going over to Europe with a bunch of college students that we'd selected from across the country. And the year before, I met a guy who I had known before that was now the head Olympic team coach, and he asked me to guest play with them. That was really cool. So I was like, I'm going to go in training because I get guest playing opportunities. I think what happened was, and back in the 90s, you know, we didn't clean things off. I think there was a weightlifting bench that I was on, and I might have had a pimple on my back, and someone else had this strep that didn't affect them, and it went through my sweaty t-shirt and then infected me that way. I believe that's how I contracted it.
Right.
What
no,
it
so
does.
Sorry. Go ahead. Continue.
No, well, what it does is it starts shutting down all the organs. So I was at a Nike camp to speak, and that's when I started feeling ill. I removed myself from a coach's match, and that night I was either sweating profusely or throwing up like crazy in the bathroom. I got up the next morning. We were outside of Chicago. I had no freaking way knowing where the hospitals were. My mom was an hour and a half away in southern Wisconsin. So I showed up. Mom, I mean, as wise as all women are, as soon as she saw me, she said, "Get your butt over to the emergency room. Something's wrong." So we did. Presented. My temperature was like 102.8, which should have triggered, hey, take a blood test.
That's my favorite radio station.
What's that?
102.8.
Oh, yeah. Very good.
Yeah, they call it Hot Fever 102.8.
Yeah, that's right.
That's
music's so good it'll make your skin fucking melt off.
Well, that's basically, then we are related on that. I should start listening to that. God. So as a young doctor, and he really said, "Hey, here's some Gatorade, you'll feel fine." I had 2 freaking recruiting trips in Minneapolis, St. Paul area the next day, and I wasn't feeling fine. I got up, I had to cancel those, and last thing I remember was my stepfather backing out of the driveway and my mom looking at us freaked out. And I woke up a month later. Sorry, I'm cutting to the chase a bit.
Holy
wow.
shit.
A month later,
Wow.
from a coma
Whoa.
to learn that my mother and my brother had to make a decision. Let me die, the only reason I was alive because I was an athlete. Or amputate both hands at the mid-forearm and parts of both feet and see how it handled life.
Wow.
But during that,
shit.
I looked back in hospital records, all the organs were shutting down. I contracted pneumonia. I mean, when people would come in, I was told that they couldn't barely find me in the hospital bed because there were so many tubes and machines and everything going on to keep me alive. So it was,
God, Scott, do you know how similar or different is Group A Strep to something like staph infection?
They're
It
in
sounds
the
like-
same
it sounds
family.
similar.
They might be cousins, but
Okay.
there are, I guess, over time, what I've learned, over time, we all lose some ability to fight against certain illnesses. Well, over time, maybe in my family and specifically to me, I was unable to defend this strain of strep. So there are multiple strains of strep. I'm sure I had strep throat when I was a little kid, but I had a different strain.
Like the normal, the quote unquote normal strep that a lot of
had
people
that. Stay home from school and watch Gilligan's Island. So I was happy.
And just
How old were
to
you
give
when-
like perspective to the differences between the two. So Staphylococcus and Group A Strep, which is Streptococcus,
very similar.
are not the same. They're different types of bacteria.
Correct.
But they have very common cases of skin and throat infections. So it's really not uncommon to hear about someone who will get like a staph infection from a gym. It's like really common in guys that roll in like a Brazilian jiu-jitsu classes. Like
I had a teammate at
staph
high
is a
school
big
when
thing.
when I was down in the States playing hockey, and he got staph, and he didn't do anything physical for a year.
Yeah.
And he was like a 3-season athlete, didn't do and could not do anything for a year, and all of a sudden there was like this like strict like you cannot share a towel. There is zero towel sharing in the changing rooms.
And
period
just to know what to look out for, staph often appears in grape-like clusters and lives on the skin, while strep forms chains and are more common in the throat, but both are capable of growing on the surface of the skin.
So you woke
Scott,
up. Yeah, go ahead, Brett.
how old were you when this happened, and what was it like to so quickly go from like a healthy, athlete to all of a sudden waking up in the hospital a month later, with these amputations?
Well, I had a week before Nike, I turned 35. So I had a brand new car. I mean, we finished our first season when I was coaching at the college level. We were nationally ranked. Like, shit, man, I'm, here I go. I'm rolling. The only problem with Nike, I better slide this in. We were under contract with Adidas. So that was funny. Show up in all Adidas and you got to change. So I was 35, and I would go even a little bit further in what you're saying, that I was a white guy in a profession that relied on, all I had to do was win and produce results, positive results, and I could just keep going. I suddenly lost all of that, and I was labeled as disabled, which is total 180.
And
So
for folks
that was a great deal.
Yeah. So you were, and we haven't mentioned it. I mean, people would have heard it in the intro, but if they missed it, you were a high level elite soccer coach, or football coach, depending on where you live.
You're talking.
But hey, Wisconsin. You you motherfuckers aren't saying football. So you were coaching like state championships, and like what was who were the folks that you were coaching at that time? What did that look like?
I had been working my way up the ladder through the high school ranks and the club ranks. An opportunity came for me to go to be a head coach at a Division III school here. This is non-scholarship. And I saw that as more appealing than going in right out of college and being someone's assistant at a D1. I didn't want to do that. I don't know if it was, I just wanted to do it my way. So I was in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, which is near the border with Minnesota, and we had reciprocity. So more than half of my players came from Minneapolis, St. Paul area, which tends to be a little bit higher level player than especially some areas in Wisconsin. I could recruit out of Madison and Milwaukee, but it was more limited. So the quality of player out of Minneapolis,
D3
St. Paul was
schools.
better.
Yeah, you're just destroying the other teams in the league at that time.
Well, at the college level, it was pretty. I mean, there are a lot of quality colleges in Minneapolis, St. Paul area, all in Division III. So it was a fight to try to get out of that region to get recognition.
So one of the things you mentioned there, and thanks for the context, but you were mentioning like this, you had this trajectory, you had this idea of life. You were the successful white guy soccer coach ego is like at its peak, and then all of a sudden you wake up from a coma and you're now the disabled guy.
And in a matter of like how many days? Was this like a week or 2 weeks, or like how quickly did that all happen?
Man, I was supposed to be dead within the first few days that after I went back to the hospital. Somebody actually had,
I mean, like necrotizing fasciitis is terrifyingly fast. So fast that you didn't even get to, I'm assuming you didn't even really get to feel the pain from it, because you were, as far as they were concerned and you were concerned, it was like you were presenting as like really sick, but the flesh eating, disease, my guess is that it was not found until after they had put you under,
a few days
after
later.
they had induced coma.
They put it all together. Once you have all these organs shutting down, they piece it together. Well, here it is. There's the issue. Now let's go after that and try to track down where it was. They originally, because I had mentioned that I had pulled a muscle in my chest, they went in and looked around there. I had no clue. I was in the coma.
Right.
But then they ended up probing more around my body, and they found a pocket in the back.
So, but why your hands and feet?
Yeah. Why?
All right. So here's what happens, guys. Biology 101. The body
From
takes
a fucking
care of
soccer coach from Wisconsin. Take it with a grain of salt, guys. Take it with a fucking grain of salt, okay?
human physiology. Okay.
You said 101.
101. Yeah. The body takes care of itself. And that's one thing understood somewhat before I was sick, and I totally understand after, and I play it off, and I present it to my players ever since I was sick. Let the body take care of what we'll tell you. Listen to your body. I mentioned that to players all. Listen to your body, because it will take care of you. What the body does when there's an illness, it releases white blood cells, and they just go freaking attack the illness. Well, here's a problem with all of these white blood cells going out. You have the blood vessels are smaller and smaller and smaller the closer you get to the ends, the extremities. So imagine those will fill up with white blood cells first. Depending on how sick you are, and I'm so god-darn sick, it just sent out so many that it clogged. Well, if it's clogging and you're not getting blood, what's going to happen?
Oh, crazy.
Yeah, so things die. And
Wow.
it happens in the book where some different people in my family describe, almost on the hour, they could see the blackness creeping towards, up past my hands and into the forearms.
Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah, it was.
Wow. That is so wild. So wild. And then to think like we've talked to a number of people who've been through a coma, and we've heard some like interesting stories about, I find coma such a fascinating thing. That like when you think about sleep, and you think about coma, and you think about consciousness and unconsciousness, there's the fear that people have of like being, locked in some sort of like vegetative state, but they're completely aware. For you, you woke up, all of a sudden you're awake, and you're realizing, fuck, my hands are gone, my feet are gone. Do you have any recollection of like, with the induced coma, was there any state of dream sense or any awareness at all? Like, do you have anything, or was it literally just like, no, there's a gap of about a month gone and I have no idea?
Every single dream, I was unable to move, which fit with how, when I woke up.
Right.
When I woke up, I couldn't move. I had a neck brace, so I was wondering, was I paralyzed or what? I had no idea. I couldn't move. Seriously, I could not move. It was because I atrophied, lost 40 pounds of muscle. That's why I couldn't move. Whoa. And there was a morphine drip. Here's one thing, going back, I wish I would have stayed on the morphine drip longer, because that was fun. I had some wild dreams. We put them in the book. But and this is in the book too, when I transferred out of ICU and over to rehab, I was on a gurney, and of course I was on an elevator, and that brought out a memory I remember being awake, going down to the emergency room, and they were playing Clapton's Greatest Hits. And I know damn well that must have been amputation day. I think they pulled me out of that coma in order to get me into something so they could better control my state of consciousness or whatever while they did the amputations. Because those took hours.
And so when that happens, in that environment or in that scenario, that gets just like, you have no capacity to say anything about what you would like to happen. They're just going, he either dies or we do this. Yeah. And see, like, was the idea that we're going to do this, we're going to amputate up the forearm and at the feet and at the ankles, and then hopefully all of this clogging from all these white blood cells will stop, and there will be circulation after that. But like, maybe that won't happen.
No, I was gonna be dead within a couple of days, because they would have had to unplug me, and they had dialysis machines. Everything was working for me. I wasn't breathing on my own. Everything was just being done for me.
Even going into the coma, were they like, did you know, and maybe you don't remember, but like, were you conscious at the time when they were like, hey, we're going to put you into a coma?
They're like,
this
good
is
night.
what it's going to be like.
I don't remember. My mind shut that out. The last thing I remember before I woke up was backing out of the driveway. Looking at my mom.
Yeah.
That's it. By the time we got out of the driveway, I don't recollect anything.
How disorienting is opening your eyes, and then I mean, like it reminds me of this. It reminds me of the opening of Kill Bill.
Yeah.
Where she wakes up in the hospital, and you're just like, oh my God, how disorienting would this be to try and piece together, like, where am I? What's going on?
Who's president?
I mean,
I was asked that.
Yeah.
And you know what I said? Bill Clinton was president at the time, I believe. I said Hillary Clinton. I was told that. I was told that that's what my response was. Hillary Clinton.
And that's why she never got elected.
Yeah. Just seriously. It just didn't sound right.
Yeah. Little Mandela effect.
So what is it like waking up and what was the process like of like learning about the amputation and sort of coming to terms with that in a sense?
Man, I think we do a pretty damn good job of it in the book about how the whole thing came about with how I woke up, because there was constant play of ESPN or maybe CNN headline news at the time, just to see if something would help pull me out of it. And I do describe it in the book as exactly how it happened. I heard women's voices and it was, what the heck is going on? And then when I finally came around enough, I saw there was a television with women playing beach volleyball on ESPN. And then the nurse was talking to me, and then she turned around and saw that I was awake. So that's when things really started getting cooking. And that's 1 minute or so before the doctor came in and started talking with me.
Wow.
Couldn't comprehend what the heck was going on, man, because I couldn't move. That was freaky.
Mm-hmm. Coming back to the sort of like identity shift. I mean, I as like a male in his like mid 30s going through something like this, that's obviously kind of like shattering. And like I can imagine like really hard to. I mean, that's not like in about a year I'll be used to it, and we'll kind of go from there. Did you feel like there was, and especially because of like the time difference, right? Like we're talking about, Clinton was president. It was a bit of a different time, talking openly about mental health and disability was not as I guess commonplace as it is today. Did you feel like you were viewed differently or treated differently now that you had this like new identity, someone who is now a quad amputee? What did that look like, and how did you deal with it?
I didn't have to deal with it so much when I was in the hospital. I was in the rehab for 4 months. So, I mean, I had my people around me, the different physical therapists, occupational therapists, all the nurses, family would come in. And, but here's the thing, guys. I screwed up big time. The male thing, I think, was I'm going to go back to work. I woke up in August. I missed Europe. They went over there. They won 3 tournaments without me. I was like, God. And then, but my team was starting to train for during the off season coming up. And my focus really was, hey, I want to get back there. Bullshit. That wasn't going to happen. I ended up, when I was over in rehab, so much went on there. I totally distanced myself from anything that was negative. It was all the positive. My athletic director would send videotapes from training sessions, and there would be communication with my assistant coach who was taking over for me. So I just totally didn't think about what was going on up here, and I definitely didn't think about what was going on in here. And everyone else worked with me on that. I'm not cutting on them, but everyone looked past it. Nobody wanted to talk about it. Nobody ever talked about it, especially me, but I probably led that charge as well. I don't want to talk about it.
And you mean that in the sense that, like, I remember going to my first therapy session and assuming that like when I first went to therapy, I thought, I'm just kind of here to check it out, see if this thing might be helpful for me. And I remember the first time like telling my therapist about some of the, my experiences in life that have been hard. And she said back to me, that sounds like it was really hard. And I just like broke down and started crying. I was like, it was hard. And like, I never I never said that it was hard before and acknowledged that it was hard and that I had been through something that had felt, relatively speaking, hard for me. And so like when you're talking about, you weren't paying attention to what was going on, in your head and in your heart, is it like that idea of like acknowledging the fact that you had been through something, really hard and, life-changing, that you just weren't sort of paying attention to, and because of that, probably in some ways the people around you weren't also paying attention to that? Is that like kind of the hard part that you're talking about?
I think one of the things that I really focused on, I believe, or I can look back on, which was not a good thing, was I was so worried about my guilt on how everyone else had to deal with me now. That was
you're the
huge.
burden.
Guilt. I mean, it's still with me. What happened to me, how it affected so many other people. And I hated that. So that was my directive on how to get around it.
Who were the people at that time in your life that showed up and were your caregivers?
A longtime girlfriend. I broke up a year before I moved over to the college level for coaching. So I was single at the time. I mean, I was just totally focused on soccer and my career, but immediate family. My players, I mean, that was one of the things I think that set us apart with our program, was we're all really tight. They were like, at the time, they were like my sisters, my younger sisters. I was coaching women. And
okay, good. I'm glad you said that, because I was like, oh, is that like a hazing thing?
I know, because I feel like the default as you're talking about it is I'm just like, the default is just like, I'm just picturing you coaching guys. So when you said
sisters, I went, whoa, that's
especially on
like
a college campus.
you're still razzing them all these years later.
I mean, it was
really
a broad base. The other coaches at the university, my athletic director was fantastic on everything. She just, whatever time you need, I just didn't take it. I didn't take the time. I just focused on work. That's what I did.
Did you ever? Like was it, what did that shift ever come where you started to actually take the time to like take care of yourself and start to really process like what the fuck you went through?
I guess my thought was, I coached for 4 more years. We saw a national ranked program, and then I hit depression. And then maybe we'll get to it. I just said, to hell with this. And I ended up going out west. I ended up leaving soccer and to raise what turned out to be 5 adopted kids from Romania and Ethiopia. And I was thinking, I could look back and thinking that was a time, but no, I think I still faked that. I just used them as my focus, which I enjoyed. At least I enjoyed it, because I had lost liking or loving soccer so much because of the discrimination that I ran into.
5 is a lot, but it's too bad you're in soccer, because you need 11 for a team. So you kind of fucked up there. It's too bad.
Yeah, I became a basketball coach
in hockey or something.
hockey. I could feel the whole squad.
Yeah, right. Man, it was a blast. But it probably wasn't until we get deeper into the story, when I went 20 years later after I left soccer, I went back to coaching. And maybe we'll get into what that program was like and how that was. And that's actually, guys, that's the second half of the book. But still, I don't think I still focused, going back to your original question here, on me. And I think I've been doing that more since really probably marketing of the book, because I get to talk about things like this on the podcast. Now, you guys had, what was her name? Angela Emerald, is
Emily
Cannabis a
Animal.
Psychedelic? Remember that episode?
Oh, yeah.
I was thinking when I watched that last night, damn, I wish I would have had someone like that or a program like that when I got out of the hospital. Because I think listening to what she was saying, and I do gummies now, just a 5 milligram. I enjoy that. It helps me relax and it helps me get focused. So I think I'm just now finally getting to that point.
Right.
It's funny how like this is a really common through line, and I think something that like when this stuff happens now, people are more likely to like open up this box that for you has taken a very long time, and for many people takes a very long time, where you get like a physical thing that happens to you, whether you in your case you get an infection that leads to an amputation, or you have somebody that has a cancer diagnosis that they get past, or whatever it might be, or a major injury, or somebody gets hit by a car and like they can't walk again, whatever, and the focus so immediately goes to like how are you physically doing? Have you gone through the rehab? Has your body started to work again? Like, oh, you don't have the cancer anymore. That's so wonderful. And that there's like this entire ocean of the way that the mind deals with the transformation and the life transformation that occurs when somebody goes through a cancer diagnosis or loses limbs or whatever it might be. And that there's so much focus that goes towards the physical aspect of it, and so little, I think more now, that goes towards going like, how are you dealing with the fact that you don't have four major appendages?
I think the reason why so much of that does go into the physical, though, right, is like it makes me think about conversations we've had on the show with occupational therapists, where you have your ADLs and your activities of daily living, and if you're unable to do your ADLs, then you're most certainly going to be extra fucked when you're trying to like take care of your the mental side of everything, right? So if you can get to a point where you can, you're capable of achieving your ADLs, okay, great, you've got that. Not to say that it's like you should then wait till that's done in order to take care of the mental side, but it's like it is such a, I mean, we are physical beings, right? And we need to be able to get up in the morning. We need to be able to brush our teeth. We need to be able to cook our food and wipe our ass and do all these things. And we need to be able to figure out the things that we can't do and what we need help to do.
I think the big observation here is that there's a lot of friction between the transition phases of the healthcare system. So it's like immediately the first thing Scott needed was physical treatment. He needed, to have the surgery and make sure that this disease
doesn't kill
or
him.
Infection wasn't going to kill him.
Yeah.
And then once you're stable and able to start focusing on rehab, then it's like, okay, like let's get him back to, at least being able to move his body and gain some of that weight back and that muscle back. And then it's like, okay, now we need to move into like the occupational therapy phase and the ADLs. And then as you start to move beyond that, it's like, okay, well now what about
They're like, you've graduated, see you later.
Yeah. But like, there's no, it's the friction between those sort of phases. And Scott, my mom had cancer and has been cancer free for almost 10 years now. Cool. And the hardest part for her was after the cancer was quote unquote gone. She had a major operation. She uses a catheter to go to the bathroom now, and her life has completely changed. But there was never any, mental health sort of focused treatment afterwards. And I think that's super common for people who go through experiences like this.
Well, let me, you just touch on something. I figured we were going in this direction. At one point when we were living in Las Vegas, a gentleman from the amputee unit at the Veterans Administration Hospital there, big hospital. You had all these amputees coming home from Afghanistan and such, and he wanted to start a program to bring me in, hire me to be there as a resource for these amputees. Like, yeah, this makes sense. So I was tagged on these emails between him and the higher ups to try to get this program accepted and to become part of that hospital. And I put the damn email when he was shoved down his throat in the book. It was just one sentence, basically. It was, we don't have the money to do this. So you can't have the program. That really was a shocker. So what you're just saying about what happens after, the occupational therapy, so to speak, nothing,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't do that myself either. And that's what I was talking about with the cannabis on that person. That I think that would be a great program. And I wish I would have had that at the time.
I mean, it's fair of you to say and take some level of ownership of like, I didn't do that myself, but also
The two things
it's
like
important
influence
to
each other.
acknowledge that there's a failure in the system as well that sort of lets people get to that place. I mean, it's not black and white, and there's a lot of gray in there.
If people aren't asking and people aren't offering, then like it breaks down.
And
in both
also,
directions.
by the way, like talking about the friction between those different phases of healthcare, I believe that there are actually probably more programs available than we're aware of. But the problem is like getting someone. So like Scott, when you wake up and you're coming to like terms with this idea of living life now as an amputee and trying to like understand and wrap your mind around how you feel, even if somebody shows up at your door and they're like, hey, by the way, Scott, I'm here from the Amputee Society and I want to talk to you about being an amputee and I'm here to help you. The odds of you even being ready to sort of have that conversation at that time is also one of the challenges is like, how do we get people there mentally to be comfortable with talking about these things? Because I think a lot of times, like, I mean, you said it yourself, like you're just focused on rehab and getting better and like staying positive and like this mindset of like, I got to get back and make sure that the team's doing what they need to do. It's not about you at that time. And like, how do we get people to like, what did it take for you to sort of now start to realize that this is a part of, the human experience and the, in some ways the recovery?
I'm starting to get a feeling about the book might be the avenue I might get pulled into something to be able to speak as an advocate. I'm totally ready for that. And disabled community, whatever, inspirational, whatever, I'm totally ready to do that because hell, I mean, you guys are in Canada where things are a little bit better, but you're still hearing about what's going on here in the United States. I mean, this is a positive story in negative times. I just throw that out there. And whatever can happen from this, I will take that on as a responsibility. And I think that now falls on me. I never had that at all. And again, I'm not complaining about anything at all. But the process of how I finally got to this point took a hell of a long time, in different ways.
I mean, it's interesting because you've been talking a lot about the experience of writing this book, and it sounds like, when you actually do take the time to, I'm imagining that in the process of writing this book, you've thought about reflecting on your experience in a way that you've probably never thought about to this point, and just like the depth of like going into the experience. And it sounds a lot like what happens in therapy, or when people journal about their experiences, they start to realize and draw these connections between different moments or come to understand them in different ways. So in like deciding to write a book, how has that transformed the way that you look at your experience?
Totally. I mean, it was so helpful, but it has changed after we signed with my publisher and we started running things back and forth through editing. That's when it really started to hit me because I was able to distance myself. I let someone else kind of take control over a direction, the storyline a little bit. It gave me an opportunity to really step back and look at it as it's not mine, but can this thing be a vehicle to help? And I really think that with me going back with, waking up at 2:00 in the morning because, oh shit, I just had an idea. I have to go get to it, put my arms on so I can go type it in. But a lot of that stuff really happened after we got into the editing process and started getting even deeper. I mean, this book was, at one point, it was pretty long. We included the kids in it. Now, it won't work. So the kids, one chapter is used as a bridge between the illness and when I ended up leaving coaching at the college level to then coming back and started working with a group of 12-year-olds. So it's been a fantastic process for me. And I think it's also helped pull me out of it because I see this as a definite possibility to help, which I guess maybe I'm faking myself a little bit, because I always got into, I just want to do everything to work. I want to get things done. I want to get things done and accomplish things. That was my drive. I think that drive has changed a bit now. The more I'm talking on podcasts and with being interviewed for magazine articles and things, it's changing. And we're in the midst of it. I think it's pretty cool.
The book is titled "Play from Your Heart," and it's coming out in June. Correct?
Yeah, but we have started. It's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, blah blah. Everybody, because I know darn well that unless you're a celebrity, a memoir is not going to do anything. So we're trying to build it up. Here's the competitive me. I want this damn thing, when it drops on June 9th, to already be have the numbers to be considered a bestseller. I mean, that's my target for doing this. It's fun for me, because if I accomplish that, it's, yeah, you bet. It's like winning a national championship, because it's not going to be easy. So that's the process of why we're doing all of this stuff now. Here we are in December. The book doesn't come out for another 7 months, but it's a process. I'm learning that it definitely is a process.
What would you say is the biggest thing that your experience with Group A Strep has taken away from you?
I lost my self-confidence. I still, how am I ever going to have the same self-confidence? It's just not ever going to be there. I guess it does come down to accepting that lower level. I've learned a lot about myself and what I'm able to accomplish and overcome, the resilience, so I hope I made my mom proud with coming back. She passed a few years ago. So again, it all ties together with opportunities, responsibilities, learning about myself, what's inside of myself. If I can do that to try to send a message and stuff out, I'll do that as well.
And what would you say is the biggest thing that it's given you?
An opportunity to look at myself, and I think our world. I ran up against discrimination. Like we're talking about with the white guy in athletics. Boom, all the doors are open. Doors were closed. I ran into discrimination quite often, because blatant examples of when someone, all they saw was my resume, but when they shook my hand, the attitude changed. Definitely. I think it just reminds, especially males, about their own mortality. I think that's frightening.
Speaking of shaking your hands, I mean, we've seen a couple times your prosthetics that you have, and you said that the amputation happened just slightly up the forearm. Is that correct?
Mid-forearm.
Like your mid-forearm. Okay. What does what is the world of prosthetics is something that is constantly shifting and changing and evolving. So for you, what does that look like in terms of what you have available to you? How does that work? Do you get to upgrade your phone every 2 years?
Do you have your own prosthetician?
Yeah. What does that look like for you?
Oh, I've had some very good prosthetists, and I see them as being actually a hidden artist with how they have to form work with the human body. It's been pretty cool. It is
an art, for sure, yeah.
It is an art. Not currently legal, I don't think, in the United States yet, but I think in Canada we have legal...
Prostitution.
No, sorry, you're thinking prostitution. No, we're talking about... we're talking
100%. Just clip him saying that he works with wonderful prosthetists. And that they're good with their bodies.
But back to the question.
Definitely clip that and just cut it there.
Back to the question. Do you do you have a collection of prosthetics and do you swap them out? What does that look like for you? What is the prosthetic sort of situation for you?
Well, let me quick hit on another little story here, guys, about something I learned. Back when, and again, this is the United States, during the wars and amputees coming back, I was contacted by Johns Hopkins University because the government was tossing millions or billions of dollars at trying to come up with ways to help these returning soldiers seem a little bit more, quote, normal. So I was asked to go out there for a couple of days and try out on the computer version of the hands that we're now seeing, we all know about, with individually moving fingers. And yes, I could flip someone the bird. They were that good. But after the second day, and I proved that it was possible that these can work, I told them point blank, listen, guys, when one of mine breaks, it takes 2.5 to 3 months to get back from repair at the cost of thousands of dollars. You're talking about Army veterans that are probably getting their VA benefits, that when these things come back, they look good for a while. But if they break down, because they're quadruple the number of moving parts, they break down, how long are they going to be in the shop? How much are they going to cost? You better make sure that these things are durable. I never heard from Johns Hopkins again. I actually, 2 years later, used one of those hands and it fried. The electrical components fried.
You said that to them and they were like, damn it, these are like 10-use items.
Yeah, I was at dinner with the head honcho and I told him, I look him straight in the eye, because you darn well better not, make these things so they're going to break down. I have loaners. I can get a hold of a loaner. When actually I texted my prosthetist yesterday.
Taylor,
about
prosthetist,
just
the
like
person who
just
makes-
like
Yeah,
that.
I know,
Got 'em
just-
on-
yeah.
No,
got 'em on text.
prosthetist, guys.
Oh,
Come
right.
on.
Yeah.
About
So that
please,
Are you
please
free
give me
tonight?
I told him, give me a loaner on the right because it's not doing something properly. So
Right.
I know that that's going to be coming, and then I'll give him the right, and they'll go fix it.
I mean,
so
especially on
the
the cost thing, I just wanted to say, like if you were to offer that up and like they're not as durable or they're not as cost effective as they should be, but then you've given somebody a look into what it's like to use something that is so dexterous and useful and helpful, and then like it breaks or it doesn't work anymore, and the
pull it
cost
away.
is too high and you can't get it replaced because it's too costly, and then you take that away and like it's like you're losing functionality all over
Exactly.
again.
Yeah.
And so the prosthetics that you have now, they do not articulate. They do not move, or do they? They do have look at that. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, you can grab stuff.
Yeah, I can
right.
grab stuff. I mean,
Cool. Very, very, and so like from accessibility standpoint, like logging into and off of this call, for example, do you use just a regular mouse and a regular keyboard, or do you have like sort of accessible specific tools like things that you would use for a computer, or other things in your house like kitchen items or things like that that are more, I guess, easier to use with the prosthetics?
when I was released from the hospital, my whole objective, I was telling people were telling me, well, use this and use that, and we can have this done. I want to learn how to do everything the same as they did. So my mouse is, just think of a mouse. Underneath it has a little ball, right? Well, flip the mouse over, and how I use a mouse is it's a bigger ball. So I just exactly, there you go. I rotate the ball. So it's the same thing. I use the stylus on my phone, which works because I can't go to a cash machine, for example, and touch it because it works off of heat. If I use my nose, I could do that because there's heat involved. There aren't many things. I have a steering aid. Do you know what a spinner knob is? For a speedboat. Spin. So I had the idea of get rid of the knob and make a U shape, so I can put my hand and grab the middle, and then the outside would put pressure on, so I can turn both ways. So we solved that problem. There are things that I came up with that I took to my prosthetist.
Got to be clear.
Yes, there you go. To have made that. So, hey, when I first got out of the hospital, it took me 3 hours to get dressed. It takes me less than half an hour now. I mean, I do it. If one of the hand breaks, it's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And hey, on the plus side, living in Wisconsin today, 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah, I can tell you right now, your fucking fingers aren't going to get cold. So that's a plus.
No, but the batteries will work more slowly if I'm out in the cold.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So, which I guess is kind of the same as my hands.
Kind of the same as how my hands work when it's fucking
Exactly.
-10 outside.
Yeah,
Do you
man.
control Do you control them with is it like the nerve endings in your arm are you using them the same way to close and open the hand?
Let's go back to that Bio 101, boys.
Yeah.
All right.
It's a sphincter. He uses his butthole.
He squeezes his butt.
Squeeze your butt.
That closes his hand.
We all have
Tip of
electricity.
your dick to open it up.
we have electricity run through our bodies. Okay.
Yeah.
So to open, there are receptors on the outside of my forearm, and to close on the inside of my forearm, because our brain sends electrical signals, and that's what fires and doesn't fire muscles. The hard part was there are multiple muscles in the forearms. So I had to figure out how to use certain muscles, but not other muscles.
Oh, whoa.
So what I did, this was tricky as hell, man. So what I did was, okay, this is the same as a soccer ball. First, accept mistakes, expect mistakes. So when I was younger, I would take a couple of bags of balls and just go knock them and start putting spin on a ball, make it do funky things. I did the same thing with this. I would drop things. It's okay. Just repetition to the point where I could handle and deal everything myself.
Right.
That's so
So,
cool.
so when you say receptors, you mean like implanted little?
No.
Okay. So, okay. I was kind of picturing like, like a little like node that's like kind of like implanted so that when you put the, when like you connect your like
it's just the current that's going through
right,
your
sure.
USB.
And so in the prosthetic itself, there's some sort of it's some sort of receiver that's receiving that sort of input.
Yeah, it's flat,
cool.
and it reads electrical current.
Yeah. Very neat. Very neat.
It's
wow,
simple.
that's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And then you're in terms of the prosthetics for your feet, because I believe you did say it was parts of your feet. So
yes.
So what
parts?
How did was it like toes to halfway up the foot?
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm missing the front half of the foot. My right foot though was the infection. Well, the skin was dead so far up my leg that most physicians would done a BK, a baloney amputation. But just so happened the day that I was in for surgery, there was a plastic surgeon from Madison, Wisconsin there that had an idea. And because I was on my back, this was really cool. He said, this guy's active. We need to give him something so he could use a brace, so he could still get around more instead of relying and taking away something else from this poor guy. So because I was laying on my back from the coma, they had to take muscle from my abdomen, which is easy to harvest, but then skin from my thigh, which isn't as good as skin from the back butt. And I guess he was in surgery for 9 hours, something.
Whoa.
And hooking everything up, the blood vessels and everything, and this muscle pad. I mean, it's ugly as hell. You can't tell the front from the back from it because of the way it looks, but it's worked for the most part. It's done okay. It has opened up a few times where I'd have to go back in for surgery, which was not good. But finally, someone came up with an idea on how to solve the problem, and it has not broken down for 8 years now. So it's finally solved.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I mean, this is your story is fascinating, Scott, and we just scratched the surface. There's so much more to be told from your story, which I'm guessing a lot of that is in the book, Play From Your Heart, which is available June 9th. Available for pre-order now.
Yes.
We implore you folks, go check it out. Go get the book. I mean, one thing we didn't even touch on, which I'm guessing maybe is in the book, is there's a whole fucking $10 million malpractice lawsuit thing that it's just your story is wild. And firstly, I'm grateful that you've taken time to come on the podcast and to shoot the shit with us. And you're very fun to chat with, very fun, very easy to find the levity and the humor that exists within this really hard experience. To know that you wrote an entire book about it and knowing that, at least it seems from this conversation that this book is really just the beginning for you, for your journey to truly finding peace and finding purpose and meaning behind the craziness that life often throws at us is I feel just really, really fortunate to be a part of having a conversation that surrounds that. So thank you so much for being a part of the show. How can people find you and stay up to date with the work that you're doing? Please let people know.
Besides the book, I mean, people can write to me directly at reader, REIDER, playfromyourheart@gmail.com. reader.playfromyourheart@gmail.com. Or they can go through the publisher, but that's probably the most direct way to be able to get in touch with me. And especially people just want to share something, I'll try to respond to things as we go.
Sweet.
So we're just starting this long path in the marketing aspect, and we'll see how many freaking emails I get. But I mean, if I'm there to help, I'll take on the responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Well, thank you, Scott. This has been a real treat.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Thanks, guys.